Welcome back. Now, the Southern Africa Development Community has endorsed the date of 25th October as to be the day to amplify calls for the lifting of sanctions against Zimbabwe. The sanctions were unilaterally imposed and illegally structured by the U.S. government and its empire satellite states. In the West, these sanctions have curtailed economic growth and stability in the country, creating a state of economic stasis, and has led to brain drain. Zimbabwe and Namibia have perennially called for an end to this act of economic warfare. And joining us with more insights on the significance of the day are Wellington Vambe as well as Arthur Makarutse, who are both organizers of the Zimbabwe Diaspora Anti-Sanctions Movement. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. Perhaps, Arthur, we can start with you. Let's talk about, SADC's endorsement of this day of 25th of October 2024, this Friday. In fact, what does this mean for the movement against these sanctions here?
All right. Thank you. As you might be aware, just a brief background, the Anti-Sanctions Day, the October 25, came as a result of the SADC summit in 2019 in Dar es Salaam, under the chairmanship of the late President Magufuli, where all the SADC member states gathered and they assessed the environment of the economic situation in Zimbabwe, the political situation, the social situation, and under those submissions, the Secretariat came to a point where they said they agreed that October 25 should be declared the Zimbabwe Anti-Sanctions Day to amplify the voices of all the member states of the SADC countries to the uplifting of the illegal sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by America and its allies.
Fantastic stuff. Wellington, how do you see the role of SADC in addressing this matter, in seeing the lifting of these sanctions against your country?
Yeah, as my colleague has just preluded, SADC is a grouping of 16 member states. And our mantra as SADC is an injury to one is an injury to all. So it is very, very important that we make sure that the role of SADC is very, very important in making sure the economic situation of Zimbabwe is addressed, is improved. Yes,
very much indeed. Of course, we have been calling, for the lifting of these sanctions for quite some time. Arthur, you'd agree, at UN platforms, be it the General Assembly, etc. Back in the day, of course, your then President Robert Mugabe would openly, of course, ask for the lifting of these sanctions. But what real progress have we made in the years? I mean, yes, we've been calling repeatedly for the lifting of these sanctions. These sanctions go back as way as 2003. We've seen, of course, the revision in some of these sanctions that are now imposed on President Mnangagwa and other government officials, etc. But what real progress have we been making through these calls?
All right, thank you. There's been tremendous progress in terms of amplifying our voices. If you remember, like I said before, that October 25, it's now a SADC day, which is again one step forward in terms of amplifying our voices. And it has not only been the SADC state, but also even the AU. If you check last month, the SADC, the AU chairman and the president of South Africa, they also came up strongly declaring, demanding the removal of these illegal sanctions. Back home, our president has taken bigger steps in terms of demanding the uplifting of these sanctions. When he came in power in 2018, he came with a big mantra which says Zimbabwe is open for business. Zimbabwe is a friend to all and an enemy to none. Where now he is going forward to engage and re-engage. Right now, he applied for the readmission in the Commonwealth, and we are expecting a good response this week because the Commonwealth is having a summit as we speak. He also applied to join the BRICS, which is having also a summit this week. So these are all steps in advocating for these sanctions to be removed as soon as possible.
Very much indeed. Well, and to just help us understand, just how severe these sanctions have impacted the everyday men and women in Zimbabwe.
Right. A very topical question as well, which is misunderstood by a majority of people, because when this tool was being implemented, people were made to believe that they were targeted to specific individuals. But that was just a smoke screen to make people fail to understand the intended objective of the sanctions. These sanctions, maybe somebody thought it would just be a moment of the face. It would realize what the regime change manifestors wanted, but it didn't. So it became so severe that it dismantled us from economic integration, regionally, internationally, let alone locally in Zimbabwe. Our industry is devastated, not because we are failing to run or to govern, or not because we don't have capable people, human resource and human development, no, but it is because of a deliberate withdrawal of a system that we were used to. So it was somebody, in my thinking, it meant to be temporary, but at the end of the day, it devastated the whole system to a point that, as a government, we are reinventing the wheel. Hence, the theme of our anti-sanctions day this year.
There are those who perhaps argue that Zimbabwe sort of placed this on itself. When you look at the nature of these sanctions and the reasons for the imposition of these sanctions, you look at the U.S., for instance, who are stating that, for instance, you violated human rights. For instance, if you look at the EU, pardon me, for instance, saying that democratic processes or democratic rights have been violated, for instance. Others, the U.S. as well argues, corruption, for instance. We saw documentaries, the gold mafia. So there are those who are arguing, let's say, that perhaps these are self-inflicted actions, especially looking at the individual sanctions on the president, etc. What do you have to say to those arguments here?
Yeah, a selective and subjective judgment. That's all I would say, in the sense that, like I said, it was deliberate, and it's a selective way of suggesting whose human rights are more important than whose, because the background to our fight against or with the international world sanctioning and stuff like that is based on our taking over our land, our human resource, our source of economic development. So if we did that, then it is that person's rights that we are being punished for having violated. Yes, we don't argue that maybe there could have been interactions amongst Zimbabweans themselves in the way that we perceive the motive behind sanctions and the motive behind regime change. Yes. You understand? So with that, you would find people will then make their own subjective judgments. So if you are in support of what the ruling party does not agree with, we can't say yes, because we have to support whoever thinks the rights of the opposition are more important than the rights of the ruling party.
Absolutely.
And our objective. Yeah.
Very much.
And just to add on my colleague, and the issue of human rights by the imperialists, it was just them hiding behind the finger, because the main issue was the land. In 2000, as you are aware, the Zimbabwean government came to fulfill the reason why our parents, our grandparents went to war, and it was to get our land back. So there was land reform program, which was also even agreed before independence in the Lancaster Agreement, that after independence, the land was supposed to be given back to its rightful owners, who are the Zimbabweans. So after we took our land back, they now came in the form of human rights, that we are violating human rights, which is not true. Because if it was about human rights, why did these sanctions not come before we take our land? Only after land, that's when they see the human rights.
Yep.
You see what the imperialists do. So this was not, or this is not about human rights. This is about
our land.
clarity.
I was just providing you with the different thoughts around this issue of sanctions, because that is the arguments, and I'm glad that you also, have your own thoughts on the matter. Just looking at, outside of SADC, the international response. When we speak about, the backing from the global community, would you say that Zimbabwe has received that support from the international community?
I would agree we have received, but from the eastern side of the international community. I'm sure this is the reason why even in Zimbabwe we have now introduced the Look East policy. It's because of having allies like China, allies like Russia, who have been on our side. Even in the UN summits, you would hear the presidents of China coming strongly about the sanctions illegally imposed on Zimbabwe. But on the western side, of course, they haven't done much on our side because they are the imposers, and they would be happy to see us suffer at the hands of these sanctions. But on the eastern side, we have got a bit of support in terms of the lifting of these sanctions.
Fantastic. Just in conclusion, of course, Friday is a big day. Take us through the program and, of course, some of the planned activities for Friday.
Yeah. It's a day that is very, very important to Zimbabweans across the world and its sympathizers and people who believe that we are failing to integrate in SADC, economic development, participate fully in every other sector that can influence significant growth and development in terms of human sustenance, agriculture, mining, industrial development, and stuff like that. So our cry and our drive is to make people understand that we are in dire need. Then you will see that our theme for this anti-sanctions day is our theme for this year is embracing innovation towards Vision 2030, the relentless fight against illegal sanctions. So we continuously fight these illegal sanctions, and the fight is not a singular effort, but it's collective. Therefore, we find we will have a speech read on behalf of the president at Thoringa Hotel in Independence Avenue, and we'll also have other events that my colleague will parade.
Fantastic. Just in conclusion, yes.
Yes. So on Friday, we are inviting all the Zimbabweans in Namibia, not only Zimbabweans, because this is a SADC day. We are also inviting everyone who comes or who is within SADC to come and have with us the public lecture. It's a public lecture at Hotel Thinkraf in town, opposite the police
station.
Yes, the Windu police station. And back home, we also have a number of activities which are taking place. There's going to be the president addressing the Zimbabweans, and we also have a musical gala which will be taking place there, where the main idea is to amplify our voices out to the world that the sanctions, it's high time now they have to be removed.
Very much. Thank you so much for being with us. All the best with Friday. All the best with the continued efforts for the lifting of the sanctions here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have it. That's Wellington Bambe as well as Arthur Makarutse, both organizers of the Zimbabwe Diaspora Anti-Sanctions Movement. Come Friday, the 25th of October 2024. Of course, they will be observing an important day that looks to amplify the call for the lifting of the sanctions imposed by the United States, the United Kingdom, as well as the European Union, for who they say, of course, have negatively and severely impacted the Zimbabwean economy.